No, it's not a joke. We're actually going to take it seriously this time, and see if we can figure out a way for the Greyjoys to win the Game of Thrones, or at least get what they want.
What is dead may never die! What is dead may never die!
Yeah! Sorry, I got a little caught up there. Greyjoys on the Iron Throne. Seriously? Nah, even we wouldn't stoop to that level of contrivance. Before I get into the meat and potatoes of this all, I just need to plug the Discord really quickly. We're looking to do a Crusader Kings campaign shortly in the next month or two. To be involved with that, you need to be on our Discord server, so you can see the Discord in the description below or the link on the screen right now. Moving swiftly on, the victory conditions for Balon and House Greyjoy are rather simple. Independence and recognition as the King of the Iron Islands. This is what Balon wanted during the First Rebellion, and I don't think much has changed since then, although he's 2 sons shorter.
Fewer.
Okay, whatever. Anything on top of that would be a bonus. What other strengths the Greyjoys have? Well, as a singular force, I'm not exactly the most dangerous, but they do have an impressive fleet of 100 longships, and Martin states they are in the top 3 in terms of naval power. The other 2 being the Royal Fleet possessed by Stannis Baratheon and the Red Wine Fleet from the Arbor. The Lannister fleet, for comparison, is only 20 to 30 ships strong, but the quality of those ships might be better than the longship inspired Greyjoys, but not as numerous, so that's where the Greyjoys have the advantage of overwhelming the Lannisters. Outside of their formidable navy, they are not exactly a fighting force on the land. However, they can really ruin your day if not taken seriously due to their ability to raid the coast and navigate around many of Westeros' natural defences by attacking from the sea. They also have an advantage base in Pike, which can allow them to strike and retreat behind the water walls of their islands. Won't help them against an entire realm uniting against them, as Balon the dumbass found out the hard way, but definitely advantageous in deterring retribution from a single faction. Asha/Yara is a strong prospect for an heir in both books and show, and can make the best out of a bad situation, and Theon does have his connections with the North that can make him an extremely useful political asset if not squandered. Weaknesses? Well, Balon is a bit of a thicko or short-sighted. Take your pick, but it seems to be a family trait because Victarion isn't the sharpest axe around. Euron seems a bit crazed.
Crazed, Thom? Dude fell off the crazy tree and hit every fucking branch on the way down before landing into a jacket that lets him hug himself.
As I was saying before being rudely interrupted, a bit crazed, and the jury is still out if he actually has a plan outside of causing chaos and having the great old time of things. With that all said and done, let's get to step 1, which is the only step we actually need, believe it or not. Don't look a gift horse in the mouth. Like every step 1 in these videos, let's start with the most bloody obvious common sense move, which is incidentally the only move we need for the Greyjoys to win. When offered the chance, take up Robb Stark's offer to join forces and strike the Lannisters. This gives the Iron Islands alliances with the North and the Riverlands, which equates to them having 3 out of the 9 kingdoms on one side. It wouldn't be a stretch to assume the Vale would ally with the North, considering the familial ties between the Starks, Tullys and Arryns, so that boosts their numbers to 4 kingdoms against House Lannister and the Crownlands, Dorne, Stannis and the Stormlands, and finally a yet undecided Tyrell army with the Reach. No one side has more kingdoms allied, the most being 2, and that's the Lannisters and the Crownlands, which are sort of one anyway because the Crownlands forces are little more than a bodyguard unit for the king and serve more as a DLC to the Lannisters army rather than its own game to be beaten in its own right. If Balon accepts Robb's request and attacks Castle Rock or Lannisterport, you devastate the foundation of the Lannisters, potentially taking a huge chunk of their riches, and deal Tywin a massive fuck you blow to his untouchable status by striking at the heart of where the Lannisters should be at their strongest. By attacking the Lannisters' foundation, Balon would destroy any hope of anyone else becoming king of the 7 kingdoms, which gives you even greater freedom in future events. Just look at what happens if Balon joins Robb. Winterfell never falls, so both Bran and Rickon are kept alive and well, though Bran likely still escapes to become the free-eyed— no, he doesn't, Liam, he's staying at home. Which has huge implications because Catelyn likely doesn't free Jaime out of desperation to save Sansa and Arya, allowing Robb to keep a massive boot on Tywin's scrawny little neck by holding the single most valuable hostage of the war. Robb likely doesn't sleep with Jane and break his betrothal with the Freys due to his depression and sustaining of injury, and even if he does forsake his marriage pact, fuck the Freys because we no longer need that 20 bridge of theirs since we've got access to one of the biggest fleets in Westeros. What's Walder gonna do?
You'll do fucking nothing.
Most importantly, Robb's campaign in the West becomes a resounding success because with Balon's help, Robb, well, more accurately, the Greyjoys with a bit of Robb's backing, can feasibly take Lannisterport and strike at Casterly Rock. Robb's armies already had a field day in the original timeline with raiding gold mines, driving livestock to the riverlands, and annihilating the forces amassing at Oxcross. With the Iron Fleet, Robb and Balon can take a Lannisterport, sack it or hold it, and run Tywin ragged due to his own forces being stretched thin already. Remember, he's got to meet Robb's other forces inland and also be ready to repel Stannis' assault on King's Landing that will still be on its way. The Greyjoys and Robb's supplementary forces can either bail out with the goods after forcing Tywin to ride back to his home, or they can dig in and defend the Rock/Lannisterport to pressure Tywin even more, all while having a handy escape route in the form of the Greyjoy ships. This would cement the alliance with Robb Stark, which in turn means the North, Riverlands, Isle Islands, and potentially the Westerlands, depending how compliant they are with their new conquerors and how broken their infrastructure is, on one side. I wouldn't be surprised if the Vale fall in line because the Lannister threat has dwindled massively, and that boosts the team to 5 out of 7 or 5 out of 9 depending how you want to count the kingdoms. That's a huge advantage to Team North. With Tywin losing his seat of power, he likely tries to force his way back into the Westerlands, and if word travels of the fall of Lannisterport, the Tyrells might decide it's best to treat with Robb, fall back in line with Stannis, or just stay out of it until a safer opportunity to gain power presents itself. One thing's for sure, the Roses will not want to be throwing in with the Lannisters after they've demonstrated they can't even protect their own backyard, and it would be unwise to draw the Greyjoys' attention towards that lovely red wine fleet of theirs. I'm sure Balon would love the challenge and the chance to potentially expand his navy. An alliance with the Starks is the game-changing moment for Balon and the Greyjoys. They've got a seat at the table along with strong allies with which to help them hold it. With Tywin's loss of seat, things look very rocky for him. Just like Robb losing Winterfell made him look weak and caused a lot of doubt within his ranks, losing Casterly Rock would signal to everyone that Tywin isn't as untouchable as he likes everyone to think, and all the sons in the world of Ice and Fire cannot change this into a winning situation. It's both humiliating and humanizing all at once. Tywin isn't the lion you'd have you think he is, he's just a
pink little man who's far too slow on the draw.
It's even worse for Tywin, whose grip on power rests on the perception that he's someone to fear, rather than the Starks who seem to hold on to power through being generally a nice and honourable but who wrote that? Tywin has some tricky decisions to make as Stannis is marched upon King's Landing. Roose will have taken Harrenhal and Tywin ends up getting repelled by Edmure at the Red Fork. Although, if Robb and the Greyjoys are successful with Lannisterport, Edmure might see sense in letting Tywin through and trapping him inside the Westerlands. There's no feasible way to facilitate the Red Wedding either. Robb doesn't need to go back to Walder Frey with his tail between his legs. Jaime is still a hostage, and while Roose is a cold opportunist, the opportunity just isn't there. Tywin's nuts are in the tightest clamp imaginable, and the Starks and Greyjoys are winding it tighter and tighter. If he marches anywhere but King's Landing, he's doomed. And even if he marches on King's Landing, without the Tyrell support, he's likely lost anyway. Tywin doesn't like owing favours. He needed those roses in the original story and needs them even more so in this scenario. If King's Landing falls to Stannis, you can rest assured a heavy dose of justice will be served out to those Stannis deems deserving of it, which means he likely won't be ransoming some key hostages and will in fact kill Cersei, if she hasn't already poisoned herself, along with Tyrion for his little stunt in the Bay, and Joffrey because, well, he's Joffrey and did we really need an excuse? In the books, Tommen is out chilling with Giles Rosby, and in the show he's at King's Landing, so you either have Tommen being given up to Stannis or sent to Tywin by Rosby, or killed off in the show situation. The Tyrells most likely won't be allying with Tywin, who has no home base, along with having his ass handed to him by a boy on his first go at playing war. And realistically, I think it's only a matter of time before Tywin's own men give him up or kill him. He will have very little resources to keep him in line because the Starks or Greyjoys are holding the mines or important bases, and it would almost be poetic for Tywin's own mad dog to cave his head in. That's the double-edged sword of ruling through fear. Now, this is an ideal situation for the Starks and by extension the Greyjoys. If Tywin does get word that King's Landing is under siege, then the smart move is to go straight there. It's the only move that may salvage the situation for the Lions, but it's likely to be without the Roses. Look at the situation from their eyes. From a Tyrell point of view, it might be within their best interests to declare independence once the crown is toppled. Similar to how the Greyjoys, the North and the Riverlands have seceded, the 7 or 9 kingdoms have effectively already been split up at this point, and gaining your own crown and not allying with the failing power might actually be the best choice. Allying with the Lannisters in the original timeline gave the Tyrells a pathway to the crown and the opportunity to dunk on Stannis. Win-win. Robb's hold of the North was slipping away thanks to Balon, which caused a downward spiral his side never recovered from. The Lannisters were aware of the fall of Winterfell 2 weeks before the Battle of Blackwater. In this timeline, if they ally with Tywin, they would still have to fight against the majority of the kingdoms and retake the Westerlands. 70,000 men is nothing to sniff at, but it's going to be a grueling war, and they have to take on the North, the Iron Islands, the Riverlands, and potentially the Vale, especially as a united front. Not to mention the thorn of Stannis and the Stormlands stabbing at you. Why ally with the Lannisters and Joffrey and risk a monumental ass kicking when you can just claim independence and stay in the Reach, which is basically the only kingdom that's worth a damn anyway, and rule the Paradise how you see fit? If the Tyrells don't ally with Tywin, then he has to get 20,000 men to Blackwater without being harassed by Roos's 10,000 men at Harrenhal. Remember, Roose has no facility to turn cloak in this scenario, he is going to have to stick with the winners. And then there's Edmure's 11,000 at Riverrun. If those forces join up, then effectively it's an even fight and slows Tywin down, or he gets to King's Landing and gets squashed by Stannis on one side and Edmure and Roose on the other.
You're fucked.
Because the Greyjoys and those shitholes they call islands taking the right side, it's game over for Tywin. I'm not sure what's worse, losing the war because of the Greyjoys, or getting shot by your own son in the privy. With Tywin out the picture, the Westlands become free real estate to anyone willing to stake a claim and hold it. The Greyjoys have played a monumental role in winning Robb's war. If they make it a condition of the alliance that they get to inherit the Westlands, I'm sure Robb will accept and hold to his word. He's generally good at keeping any oaths that don't involve beautiful women, and well, he doesn't care for the Westerlands. If I'm Balon Greyjoy, I'd give Castle Rock or Lannisport to either Asha or Theon, cement that hold there with force, or potentially threaten to fling Jaime Lannister with a catapult. Since as a consequence of Balon not having invaded the North, Jaime is still a bloody hostage and the last Lannister worth a damn who's still alive. However, Robb may allow Rickard to enact his vengeance after Tywin's been killed in battle, so they may have to cement their hold the hard way anyway, but hey, who's going to stop them? So what's next? It's hard to say really, the story is so different now and the Lannisters are all but extinguished, or under such control they've lost much of their former power and the Greyjoys now have land with a solid source of wealth. That's 7 hells of bonus on top of gaining the independence they initially wanted. While his dead may never die. Stannis takes King's Landing, but there's very little he can do.
I am now faced with a great opportunity, and I am powerless to take advantage of it.
One super important note to mention, King's Landing is sort of its own poisoned chalice. Everyone wants it, but on its own it's a huge burden that relies a lot on the other kingdoms. The Tyrells closed the Rose Road and stopped delivering food to King's Landing, which caused the population to starve, and began to rebel against Joffrey. This was rectified when the Tyrells and Lannisters allied, but unless Stannis can start importing large quantities of food, his new seat of power won't last long. And there's that famous saying, an army marches on its stomach. And then there's the fact he only has 20,000 men, Dorne won't care, the Reach hate him, the Vale are still playing throw a man out the moon door, and the alliance of the North, Riverlands and the Iron Islands would not be a good choice of opponent with the current power dynamics. The Greyjoys, alongside the other northern navies, would have a greater fleet than Stannis, especially after the Battle of Blackwater. More resources and more men. I mean, I know he's the Manus, but unless he causes talk of making everyone bend the knee, I could see the North's border increase into the Crownlands just to snuff out the threat before it blossoms. Catelyn, having seen Renly's death, might even urge Robb to move on Stannis to stop any black magic shenanigans, or allow Brienne to go get her revenge. Who knows? If I'm Balon and Sansa has survived the Battle of Blackwater, I propose a marriage between Theon and Sansa to strengthen that alliance. That is usually the best way to do so, and maybe suggest that Edmure can be betrothed to Shireen Baratheon as an olive branch if Stannis is willing to play ball. I mean, it's Stannis, and you've got a better chance of getting Joffrey to do something kind, or even Robert Baratheon to give up brothels, rather than Stannis even contemplating that offer, but always nice to make the offer at least. With the Greyjoys having established independence and solid alliances, even if Euron comes over and throws Balon off his bridge, Asha and Theon still have a greater claim to the Seastone chair. Euron was only really able to sway the Ironborn to elect him king due to sexism and the promise of power. Theon solves the sexism issue, and the promise of power has already been fulfilled. Euron has no bargaining chips. The Ironborn have already had their fill with the Clash of Kings, and Euron will likely come across as nothing more than the raving madman he is. Maybe Theon can ask Uncle Victarion to bring him his Uncle Euron's head. Of course, there's one more faction to consider. Daenerys Stormborn of many titles might make it to Westeros. Now it's actually much harder for her to make the trip without the Ironborn fleet to carry her forces, and we really need to lean on that and hope she can't actually facilitate getting to Westeros for a good long time. Because with the kingdoms fractured into separate entities, she might actually have to relive Aegon the Conqueror's glory days and take each kingdom one by one. And that's just a lot of work for one person and 3 dragons. Remember, in the initial conquest, Aegon sent his sisters to go treat with the different houses, and they'd only join together and take them out by force when required. She'll have to march all around Westeros one at a time to get them to bend the knee, and that's just not really it, is it? And thinking about it, what exactly is she here to do? She wants to break the wheel, and they've broken the wheel of having an Iron Throne, effectively. Thanks, I guess, Dany, for uniting us all again when we're happy separately. Anyway, as we always say in these videos, she's the only faction with flying nuclear weapons.
Oh, for fuck's sake, Dany just breaks these scenarios for some factions, eh, Thom?
How can the Greyjoys possibly hang on to their gains against the Mother of Dragons? Well, if they can't persuade Dany that the islands aren't worth the effort, which, you know, isn't a hard sell, they'll have to look at other avenues. Maybe loot that horn off Euron's body? Otherwise, like our first Stark video, they're just going to have to look to negotiate. It's all they've got. And for the long night, well, unlike Liam, I think that without a dragon, the walkers are stuck at the wall, soaking, and even if they get past it, it's not the Greyjoys' problem since...
Can they swim?
No.
Good. I'm taking the Iron Fleet back to the Iron Islands.
Best let Jon and family deal with that. With Balon joining forces with Robb, the story has taken such a massive turn it's impossible to account for everything, so we'll leave those tidbits to you guys from now on. The key ones though are, Bran and Rickon are still alive in Winterfell, though Bran still needs to bugger it. No, he doesn't, Liam. The North doesn't fall. Jon Snow is likely able to call on Robb to aid the Night's Watch, and none of those cretins at the wall are going to bloody stab Jon with Big Robb around. Cat doesn't release Jaime, who's in effect still a prisoner of the Starks, or is now a head shorter. Robb doesn't fracture his forces when he marries Jane and kills Rickard. Ramsay is rotting in a dungeon, and Stannis going north is sort of a mess because he went there to aid the North against the Wildlings and the White Walker threat, as well as retake Winterfell and unite the North behind his banner. That's kind of a moot point now. Oberyn doesn't get his brain smushed in a trial by combat because Tyrion's dead and the Lannister dynasty has fallen. Tyrells don't get blown up. Yet, like, Daenerys could always blow him up. And I can't think of anything else actually. So yeah, that's probably the best scenario for the North and the Greyjoys. Win-win. Shame it didn't go that way, eh? Anyway, thanks for watching. If you liked the video, you know what to do. Like and subscribe. Comment below if you've got something nice to say or something interesting, and if you don't, keep it to yourself. Or not.